JJ, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm thrilled.
Me too. Oh my God, I've been so looking forward to this. I love that
I
you're.
know you have, and you've been doing a lot of good marketing coming up to this. But it's I mean, every time I read one of those things, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's got an amazing life story. And not only, I mean, I didn't know the half of it, but I just knew you through our group, really. And we've actually Skyped together. You've taught me how to use my e-ad, which I need a refresher, by the way. I'm going to be paying you for some refresher. But you have been an integral part of our group. Not that everyone isn't, because
Right.
all of you are,
Right.
but some of the educators have been so important for our group because there are so many new drummers in our group, and there are so many drummers maybe that have been playing a long time, but they are self-taught like me. I was self-taught, and just didn't have a lot of that gear knowledge or rudimental knowledge or whatever it is. And JJ, for I always call you the gear person in our group, and I know a lot of people are very gear um, educated. I feel like I am now. Not on a lot of the techie stuff, but as far as like drum gear, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what I want to play and why I want to play that. But a lot of people are so new that they really need a lot of that knowledge. And JJ, my gosh, you've got it. And I'm so thankful that you've been very willing to share your knowledge with everyone. I hear a lot from the group, probably behind the scenes, that they're so thankful that you are so open to share a lot of what you know. You've really helped a lot of people in the group, and I am thanking you for them right now, because a lot of people will tell me, gosh, JJ has changed a lot for me because of you sharing so much. So thank you.
That's so cool. I so appreciate hearing that because that's that whole you hope, the sort of the ripples in the pond thing, and hope you're helping and empowering. That's my thing, is
Well, let
empowering.
me tell you, you're doing it. You're doing it. You don't have to wonder if your knowledge is going out there and not making a difference, because it absolutely is. I can tell you that personally. Your knowledge has helped me. And for the group, I think you've really helped grow the group in a really strong way, because one of the things, not only do we want to encourage and educate, but we just want to make the group a stronger community. And a lot of the things that you do really enhances our community. So
I'm
I
so
know I'm kind of gushy, but but that's just how I am with people. And I just want to know, I want you to know how appreciated that you are.
I so appreciate hearing that. And you, I mean, you started this group, and that was like, I can't remember. I think I joined whenever there was probably less than 1,000 people. That's when I was still at Tom Tom, and it's
Yeah, that's
amazing
right.
to see the trajectory. And
Sorry.
I
I forgot to
started
turn my
like that
light.
that gear group, that drums demystified at the same time, but like it's like the
Mhm.
magnet has gone towards this group, and especially then with the ads and Sharon and all of that, that being almost sort of like the face of the group, and then suddenly exploding by 6,000 members. It's changed my life since that happened, like again, there's this reciprocal thing that's going on, I'm
Yeah.
investing into it and it's coming back to me, and that's what it's all about. It's amazing.
I think so many of us are seeing that. I try to foster a real sense of inclusion and encouragement to everyone, but I see that so much it comes back to me all of the time. It's not just me doing a bunch of stuff and everybody else benefiting from it. I think I benefit from it more than anyone, because I have all of these like 6,500 sisters out there, and I feel close to you guys just because of this community is so strong.
Totally.
So
You have so much
yeah,
love pouring towards you, and we can feel it. And yeah, it's so awesome.
it's the
So
truth.
awesome. Yay.
So yay us, you guys. Okay, so let's just start on your journey. So one thing that I know, I want to know personally is, how did you choose drums over any other instrument, and when did that start for you?
Well, I actually went to, so when I was 10 and 11, I used to just always play air drums, which I think tons of us probably have, when I was a kid and would play
Right.
along. And my
Yes.
parents listened to somebody named Laura Nero, in the late 60s, who I realize now is probably one of the first kind of singer-songwriters. And that's definitely the music that I was sort of like classic rock. And that's how I started in high school, but then ended up being really drawn to singer-songwriters. And I realize now, I think as a little, 2 and 3 year old hearing it, that's probably how that started. So it was air drumming and all of that. And so when I was 11, I went to this little tiny school in our community, a little alternative school, and we did this like African drumming class with the local
Okay.
jazz drummer. And his house was literally just filled with, it was like sleigh bells hanging from the ceiling, tables, steel drums, tables covered with every percussion instrument. And he had a drum set in the corner, and that's all I wanted to do. So it was like, get on the drum set. My feet wouldn't even touch the pedals, but like I was just, there was a couple drummers in my life where I just, was so obsessed with it. Like just would stand in front of the drums, like, and feel, and now I realize like probably with no ear protection because it was probably
Yeah.
like 1974 or whatever, but
Right,
like
right.
stand in front of it, and like feel the bass drum in my chest. And like, so it was those kinds of experiences. So I finally got my first drum set when I was 14. It didn't have cymbals because my parents didn't have a lot of money. And so I went to a private high school for the arts, and so that was probably the biggest thing. But I wasn't able to take drums there. They didn't. It was the first year they started, and they just wasn't offering. They weren't offering it at that point. So I actually took guitar and acting. So I've been a
Okay.
guitarist also this whole like my whole life since that time, and I think that's also helped me, especially with singer songwriters and the acoustic thing, and really like syncing up with strumming patterns and all of that. So that was, but yeah, when I was 16, basically, I had these drums, and my guitar teacher was like, Sean in our class, like they're looking for a drummer for their band, and this was in 10th grade. And so we made our first band. It was called the Bondage Babies.
Wow.
No me for like 15-year-old, and it was a lot better than the alternative.
Right, right. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that was our first band, and it kind of just started from there. And but the big thing
Okay.
for me was music versus science. Like I had wanted to also be an astronaut. That was like one of my dreams from when I was a kid. And
Mhm.
so that kind of continued through so much of my life of like, do I have to choose between the two? And
Mhm.
and really viewing music, and especially this is then sort of growing up, especially like high school and college in the 80s. I think there was this idea that like to be successful in music, it meant playing stadiums. Either you were Van Halen or you were nobody. You were a
Right, right.
wannabe or a has-been or washed up or whatever. This kind of crazy idea of what success would be. So at
Mhm.
some point, so I kept playing, through college. Did neuroscience in college, but played like in, our band did all the dances and all that at college. But at some point, my bandmates went to Cornish, which is like the Seattle version of Juilliard.
Okay.
And that they at that point they were like, JJ, you should come with us. And I was like 3 years into my college career, and I had this whole soul searching thing, and I was just like, I don't know, so much of it for me was, first of all, I have this love of both science and music and having to choose, but there was this kind of pervasive like, that's like a pipe dream, to do music as a living, to do music for your life. Like everybody wants to do that. Why would I get to do that? And am I really good enough? And so I didn't. I stayed in school and did the neuroscience thing, and basically like, and graduated, and right out of college got like, started doing research and moved to Wisconsin, and which I was like, Wisconsin. It's so crazy, And then I ended up being there like 16 years. Like my original plan was like, I'll go for like 6 months or a year, because it was like the grad school thing. You go like do some research, you get some papers under your belt, and then you go to grad school. So
Right.
during that time in Wisconsin, I started to write music for the first time, and that was when I
Okay.
met like a fellow songwriter, more singer songwriter, and that's what really changed my whole direction of like, you know what, I can do science anytime. I can go to grad school anytime. Like I'm gonna do music now. And so the funny thing that I laugh about now is I always had this idea that like, yeah, I'll do that in my I'll do that in my 50s and 60s, and I'm like, I'm in my 50s right now. Like that's what I kept saying, that like I'll do grad school and go and do science, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm 54 right now. Like this is that time. Like I'm still not ready to go. I'm not sure if I ever will be, because I've just gone so, because I feel like music can be, and especially the way that I do it is, it can be such a mixture of the technical scientific part and the music part. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
bringing in all my neuroscience stuff when I'm teaching, when I'm doing these workshops, like, as far as my view on how people learn and how the brain works and that process and the physiology and all that, like, I'm bringing all that in besides just like you're talking about the sort of all the tech stuff and the computer stuff and all of that. Like, so to me, it's like this complete holistic thing as opposed to science felt. I love it, but it's also very kind of emotionally devoid. And so I felt like music was a way to, and especially the way I'm doing it right now, it's kind of like all the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
So again, someday I may go back to grad school, but I'm not even sure if I would do neuroscience. I might do like consciousness studies or cosmology or things like that. Like, that kind of stuff I love, but like right now, this is what I'm doing. So that's a little bit of a side, but basically played through college and then like, didn't go to Cornish, graduated, got this research thing, started to write. And then that just started to be, been bands and other bands and playing with solo artists. And then that kind of leads to maybe, it was one of my posts as I talked about this lightning bolt moment. So
Hmm.
basically, maybe fast forward 10 years, I've been playing drums some, but I also ended up playing a lot of guitar and like almost totally left drums for like 6 or 7 years. And I always had this thing where it was this kind of like, because I was like doing some engineering on records, and I did some producing, like I was doing all this guitar, like I was doing things that I found really hard, but I wanted to like be able to say that I could do and then I achieved and all this stuff. And my view on drums, it would be this sort of like, I would always sort of be like, yeah, yeah, like I know how to do that. Like I can always go back to drums, that, yeah, 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 sort of like pushing it back to the background. And starting in about 2002, I started to go to this song school here in Colorado every summer. And it's like songwriters and it's the whole spectrum, beginners up to people that tour and all singer songwriters. And I started to play with them. Every night there's an open mic, and I started to be like kind of known as like the house drummer. So every
Hmm.
night I would play, back up, and at this point I've backed up. I think I've figured out it's like 500 or 600 people over the course of like almost 20 years. And so I had started to do that and started to get known for that at the song school. And so, fast forward, and it was in different bands and stuff like that, and started playing with a solo singer songwriter. Did some of my first touring, but again, it was all part time. And in like 2007, it's at night. So this is what I talked about in that post. It's around a campfire. And this woman comes up to me, as a friend of mine there, and she's one of these people that's kind of sort of out there. Like at this point, she doesn't even remember this happening. And for me, it was like changed my entire life. And it says so much about her that she's just kind of like, she's kind of tapped in, but she's really like flighty. And so she
Hmm.
comes up to me in the fire and puts her arms on me and looks in my face, and she's like, your job this year is to realize how much joy you bring to people with your playing.
Hmm.
And it was like a lightning bolt. It was like this, because I had been like, should I do guitar, should I engineer, should I produce, like, and just going all this burnout, like, should I go back to school for it, and then I'll spend all this money and be in debt, and like just not knowing what to do. And it was like this hand of the universe came down and be like, and it was like, oh, like here's this thing I've been doing since I was 11. What's the thing that is the most me? It's drums. And it was like, I don't know, like being given not only permission, but this sort of like imperative, like
Yeah.
this is your thing. And not only is it your thing, like you are bringing so much to other people by the act of doing that. And that completely changed my life. Like that direction, I basically started then like really super actively trying to like playing with solo singer songwriters and being like a backup, like a side person. And I had this whole like kind of meditation board and altar thing, and I had this quote on there, and I think I put that in the group, where it's, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do that thing.
I
Because
love
what the
that.
world needs is people who have come alive. And that was for like 3 or 4 years, that was sort of my guiding, because I was like, should I this or that, or should I do science, like what's the most important thing, and it was like, what makes me come alive? It's playing. And so that was what I did. And it was like when I decided to do that, and to also purely do it for the act of doing it, not to get some outcome, not to have some
Yeah.
result, purely because I loved doing it. And from that moment on, I was kind of never unemployed, like from drums. And again, it wasn't full time. That was a huge process.
Yeah.
But it was, I always had some show or some artist or whatever, and that's what just ramped up into, that was 2007. And so by '09, I was that was my first full-time touring band. They were from Canada. They were called Pogirl. And then from there, I kind of did a bunch of leapfrogs. I like leapfrog to Girlyman. That was definitely the biggest band that I toured with, and that was like a 3-year thing. And that's where I did, both of those bands. It was hundreds and hundreds of shows because that's, we were full time. Like I made a salary basically
Yeah.
as a touring drummer, which was
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, so that was kind of the career, part of it. And then that was through like 2013 or 14. And then since then, it's been much more piecemeal, but really then towards the teaching part of it.
Okay,
So,
well, let's talk about that. Let's talk
yeah.
about your teaching and how it you went from, this the whole touring thing to now the teaching.
So that, and this is perfect segue because that's was my second lightning bolt basically. So 2012-ish, 2013 is when Girlyman kind of imploded and fell apart. The members had been together. Two of the members had been together since they were in 8th grade. So they
Wow.
they needed to individuate. There was just so much personal stuff going on and all that. But I had just come in the band 3 years before, and I'm just like, we're just getting going here. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe this is happening. And so that totally. So it was sort of this intern period where I was like, I'm not sure, should I tour or blah blah blah, just trying to figure out what was going on, and all of us were kind of figuring that out. During this time, a friend of the band's was running the girls rock camp in Atlanta at the time. So this is
Okay.
like, 2013, 2014. So she had been asking me for years to come and teach there. And so I finally, and my touring schedule never lined up. So finally it did because we were off the road. And so I did a ladies rock camp, and it's a 3-day thing. So for those of you that don't know about, girls rock camps, they're a nonprofit. They started in Portland in the early 2000s, and they're now a worldwide global movement. There's a girls rock camp in almost every major city. And so this is, again, like 2013 or so. So most girls rock camps have a ladies camp once a year, like a 3-day thing, and it's like a fundraiser. And basically at a rock camp, you go and you join a band and you write a song and you perform it with your band at the end of the time and at a professional venue, basically. So I came as a drum instructor and a band coach. So you're
Okay.
instructing drums, and again, most of these women have never touched an instrument, and then so you're teaching them at least enough that they can then go off that afternoon and write a song with their band and know enough to at least play it at this show at the end of the time. You go on Friday morning and you play the show on Sunday night. So I had never done, and I'd always like thought teaching seemed really cool, but I was always like, I'm not formally trained. Like again, like what do that's the class. Like what do I have to teach? What do I have to give? I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. I didn't really know that, and so basically you go through this weekend, and I'm just and so much adrenaline, and I've never done, I'm trying to like design a curriculum and coach, and and I'm just having the most amazing time. And come Sunday at lunch, we all ate lunch together, and there's probably like 75, 80 women in this room. And the director says, well, somebody, came in today and said that their child asked them, why aren't boys allowed, basically, in these rock camps. And so her name was Stacy, and so Stacy asked the whole like. So I just want to have like a discussion about that. So it just turned into those most amazing thing, because it's like it's not about man hating, it's not about separatism, it's about creating a safe space, just like our group is. It's a safe
Mhm.
space for women to play in a very male dominated area, field, without fear of judgment, criticism, self consciousness, all of that. So we're talking about that, but as we're going through the room, woman after woman is standing up, and one woman is like, I'm from India, I was in an arranged marriage, like, rock camp has helped me realize, like, I left my marriage, I realized, like, my value and what I want for myself in my life, and blah, 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 and then the next woman is like, I was in an abusive marriage for years, rock camp has helped me heal from that and like get therapy. Another one was like, I moved to Atlanta with my family and for a job, and I had no friends and no community, and through rock camp I now have all these friends, and I have a band, and I feel so fulfilled in my life. And then the next
Nice.
woman was like, I'm in my 60s and I'm a grandmother, and I've literally never done anything for myself. This is the first thing I've ever done just for me. So as these women went around, then like we went home to get ready for the performance, and I just like bawled my eyes out for like
Hmm.
10 minutes, like racked with sobs, because I realized, like, when I had started the camp, one of the directors was like, okay, you realize this is an empowerment camp disguised as a rock camp, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, whatever. And then it was like, again, this lightning bolt of like, we are healing people here. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's happening.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm in this. Like, that's it. Like, this is it. Like, I am in this now. And
Yeah.
that changed my whole life. Like, I've been teaching ever since. I've done 20 camps. I own an education company. Like, I went to Berkeley. Like, I did all this stuff. And so, again, it was like, and I never stopped playing, but like, it was just this whole entire part of my life opened up. And it was like, this is what you should be doing. Because there's
Yeah.
nothing more important than that. You know,
Yeah,
how
I agree.
more
I
important.
agree completely.
Yeah, it's like you're empowering and then you're healing people through that empowerment. So,
Yeah.
so that was the teaching thing, you know? So, yeah, so that ended up leading to Berkeley, and it was interesting after I did that post because like so many people, I just didn't realize it was even as well known as it is, the Berkeley program. And so
Hmm.
just to make sure and be clear, it was the online program. I didn't go to Berkeley and move to Boston and all that because
Hmm.
I already had an undergraduate degree, and I guess you could probably get 2 degrees, but I wasn't interested in that, and so I did it
Yeah.
online. It was kind of the early days of online stuff, and that was amazing because I could do it at any time. You know, it's completely on my own, and it's totally one of those like you get out of it what you put into it. And
Yeah.
so I was put at different times. I was doing like 30 and 40 hours a week. Like I didn't wasn't doing anything else. I just did that program. And so I got a massive amount out of it from doing that. And I really, you know, like I said in the post, I was totally self-taught up until then. And that was great. You know, I had a whole career. I played hundreds of shows, you know, all that stuff happened to me. But like then getting that, that's how I always describe it, as like this piece of the pie that was missing. It was like it filled in that whole half of like giving me the language to talk about it, you know, being able to think of things in a structure, even the way that the classes were lined out, and that this idea that like you're building, I always talk about drum education as this kind of inverted pyramid, you know, and that like timing would be the keystone of that whole thing. And like when I work with more experienced players, a lot of what we're doing is going back and looking at, do they have any holes in their foundation? They might be way up here, but some of those bricks are missing. So it
Yeah.
was like filling in all of that and realizing that, again, this idea of that, well, in order to do this, you need to know this. And in order to know this, you need to know that. And so it's like, how do you keep continually building on knowledge, and that, you know, there's no way you can get to this unless you've done this, unless you've done this, unless you've done that. So this building of the foundation. So that's what, you know, came out of that for me, which was incredible. But as I wrote in one of the comments, I think the overall most impactful thing of that program for me was the act of recording myself every week.
Hmm.
So to upload your assignments, you would have to take a video and record and get it right, you know. So I might, you know, do something 20 and 30 times to get it right. And so, you know, like I said in the thing, talk about humbling, you know, and this like,
Yeah.
seriously, that part is still off. I'm still rushing that, you know, blah, 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 like that kind of stuff. And okay, I got to do the whole thing over again, you know, but it was
Right.
like that immediate feedback of seeing and hearing what was going on, but then trying to, as much as possible, to not have judgment about that, you know. And that's something I
Hmm.
talk with my students about, and I want to do, I'm going to say it here, I'll do a whole live about it. I want to start like a perfectionism support group, like in the group, like maybe a once a month like Zoom, because I know we all you grapple with it. Doesn't matter where we're at in our career and
Yeah.
what's happened to us. And I really look at it literally as like a disorder. And it actually, if it you take it as far as it will go, you can be completely immobilized and not do anything because you're so afraid of not doing it right. So it
It
actually
can be
really
crippling.
can be, but
Absolutely.
it's like seeing it in myself, you know, over and
Yeah.
over. So the way that I was able to, a big way in Berkeley, so again, you know, daily, hourly confronting, I can't do this, I can't do this, and I have to push through that and push through those stories of like, why even try? What was I thinking? You know, oh my God, you know, this is so hard. I'll never blah, you know, all the like push through the stories and get to what I call non-judgmental observation. And it's so much of it was from this book. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis, but it's a
Mhm.
super deep, like ostensibly it's about learning tennis, but it's super deep. But his thing is to practice non-judgmental observation. So you basically just, observe your playing, and that's in tennis, but in my case it was drums. And it'd be like, okay, I want to change that, I want to keep this, and I want to do less of that, and I'm going to do it again. And that's it. No judgment, no stories, no all this like feeling bad. Because I see that in my students constantly, where if you come up against your skill level and you feel like you can't do something, you start feeling bad about yourself. And so that our inner, whatever, our subconscious basically, you don't want to put yourself in that position again. So you start procrastinating, you start not practicing, like, and then pretty soon you stop playing because you don't want to feel bad about yourself. So
Yeah.
that was how I had to do that in that program to get through it, was to be like, there's no judgment here, and I only know what I know. Like, I can only be where I'm at in my trajectory, just like any of us in our drumming trajectory. We're at different places in that trajectory. I am where I'm at. I have the experience that I have. There's nothing I can do to change that. So I'm just going to work as much as I can to do what I want to do moving forward. And so that was a massive, like I wrote in that post, it was the act of the recording and getting that feedback was the most impactful on my playing. But what came out of it was this idea, because I had always had since high school, this idea that somehow there was like, I had some like inherent deficiency, that I could never be a great drummer, that there was something wrong with me, that I would never be able to be really good. And realizing that that is not true. I just had never been taught. I had never studied. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
Like, that could not be more foundational. This idea that there's nothing wrong with me intrinsically. I can do whatever I want, like
Yeah.
I have to put in the time. It doesn't happen magically, but like, it is possible. Whereas the other way is this collapse, like, I can't do it. It'll never happen. There's something wrong with me, blah, blah, blah. So that was amazing. So that, like, I want to do a whole live in the group on Berkeley, because I just didn't realize there was that many people interested in it, and just wanting to
Yeah.
know about it. So, you really don't want to do it unless you have the time commitment, because it's just really expensive. But it was an amazing process, So that was sort of the next step after started doing rock camps, and my band had quit. So it was like, okay, I want to really focus on my craft. And so
Yeah.
that's what I did, and that was that process. So right after that is where I started teaching individually and teaching online, like individual
Fantastic.
Skype lessons.
Yeah, I have to build on that, because I think, and I struggle with this myself, and I think all drummers do, just like you said, that thing of self-doubt, that negative self-talk or whatever, when we watch our playbacks or whatever it is absolutely crippling, and it's the worst thing. I make myself record videos and put them out there, just because then when I watch them, I can see what I'd like and I can see what I need to improve on. And like you said, I don't do it with judgment anymore, because that's not helpful to me. But I do it with just my eyes wide open. Okay, I didn't have any dynamics in that, so I need to change that. Or like you said, I could have been rushing, or I could have been overplaying to the song or something like that. So you have to just look at it in a very objective way, so that you can always improve on what, it's not that I'm trying to match this person's playing. It's never that, because I have a very different style than a lot of people that I like to watch them, and I love to see what they can do, but I'm not them. So I'm going to play like me, but I want to improve on my skills. And so that's a way for me to do that. So I appreciate that very candid look at it, because I think so many people can relate. And there's several people that are in the chat right now that Linda just said, this sounds like how I feel right now. Thanks for sharing. So that was to you, JJ, when you were talking about that kind of crippling self-judgment. That's when that came up. So just so you know. But thank you guys. Feel free to put anything in the chat, and we'll try to look at all of those. So right now, why don't I open this up for you guys' questions? Does anybody have a question for JJ? Surely, I think we have like 30 people on, so there has to be somebody that has a question. I'm trying to see everyone, but there's like two full screens of people on right now. So
Yeah,
if anybody, go ahead.
I have a question for.
Go ahead.
Um, you obviously have had your foot in the door for industry type things. Maybe your perception of that might have been a little different at the time, but I've run into a lot more of things here in Wisconsin where a lot of drummers that I've met along the way don't have like either a college history or a background. They just learn by listening and watching and just jumping in kinds of things. I'm just kind of, you're talking about you don't know what you don't know. And that's really where I think we're all kind of stuck, including myself, where I've written and recorded CDs. I've performed live with many different bands. I've taught private lessons, but the next step is a little tough for me because I really don't know, how to move forward. And you're saying that association maybe with the girls camp have exposed you to people that did know? Is that what I'm picking up on?
Well, I would say the girls' camp was really more of the teaching thing. Like I got them all, pretty much all my initial private students were through the camps. I would do a camp and usually end up with at least one student, if not two. So that was how I built my student body. But as far as my career, I mean, it's an interesting thing because it was like, the way it was such a happenstance thing, and I hear this all over the place because it was like, I was doing this song school, and so I joined an acoustic duo from that. We played at a folk conference, and a woman who was in the audience saw me and called Girl, the band, and was like, "You've got to see this drummer. You've got to blah blah blah." They happened to be coming through Fort Collins where I was living. That next week, I played a show with them, and I was touring with them full time 3 months later. And then they happened to, already have tours set up with Girlyman, even once I had joined the band. So I started playing with Girlyman, and I leapfrogged to them. So that was, sort of my career to a full time drummer. Was like sort of leapfrogging. And I didn't plan it that way. So as far as like, I guess some of it is where you're when you say the next step, and you don't know what you don't know. Like I didn't have my Berkeley education. All that happened to me with no training. I was completely self-taught with all of that. It's almost, if anything, my training has been mostly then I've just really gone into the teaching thing. Just last year I did a bunch of touring, with an artist, but had really kind of dove into that. So as far as like how do you jump up to the next place, like say from local or regional? Is that kind of what you're wanting to do? Like you want to tour nationally? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I definitely think that that's my next step. I think that's my next step. I just don't know.
I think some of it is getting clearer on yourself of what it is that you want. I mean, touring is intense. Like I love it, and 2 out of the 24 hours of the day is like all about deprivation. You have no personal space, personal time, crappy food, hardly any sleep, and I need to say too, I was not doing the like sleeping on people's floors, traveling in a beer soaked van. Like that's not the touring I was doing at all. We were in a Sprinter, we stayed at hotels, but still, you're still in a Sprinter with 5 other people and day after day, 24/7 for 2 or 3 weeks. It's really intense. So even thinking that through, like, is that something I want, that I would enjoy? Dipping your toe in. Can you do a regional tour? Can you do a 3-day thing, a 2-day thing? But at this point, especially with COVID, that's a whole other thing, is like, who's even touring now? What's even the reality of that? That's a whole other thing. Hopefully that will change. But I would say like starting to look online, at like bands, what's the style that you like? Who are people like who like maybe already are established? Because that's another thing, is like, well, you could start a band, you could find a really good, because you want to find a good songwriter. It's all about the songs. So you want to find a good songwriter and vocalist and attach yourself to the in a good way, that you love and you love their music, but do you want to start from scratch, or do you want to join something that's already established? So those are all things to think about.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of interviews already since January, and so many of the people that I've interviewed have told me stories like Helen Walton, she used to play for Prince, and she was 21, and she just had some videos out on YouTube, and somebody from his camp basically saw her playing and showed it to Prince, and he had them call her. And it was a several step process till he flew her in to play with his band, and then he hired her. But so many people, Annika and different people, so many people have been discovered or built their careers from having videos out there, and people have seen them and hired them or hooked up with them to do some recording and that kind of thing. I mean, so many people, it's just like getting your stuff out there and then allowing networking to happen. Another person said that she contacted a band that was it you, Nicole? You contacted a band that you loved the band, and then the drummer left, and the drummer suggested that you be the drummer.
Yeah, I networked with another band. We happened to be at the same venue together, and I'm like, you're a girl drummer, so am I, can we meet? And then it was 2 years later that she was moving off the road and she thought of me.
So again, the happenstance, it's like you happen to do that, and then she thought of you, and then you leapfrog to there, and that whole like, it's like you can do a certain amount of networking just in order, like I should be networking, and I should be meeting bands, but a certain extent there is this sort of like just happenstance of it, of like serendipity,
It is, but I do think some of it is kind of getting out of your own way, because you do have to reach out to people. You do have to put your things out there. You do have to kind of be humble about it, and just it is hard to record yourself and put it out there for all people to see and to judge, because some people can be, they can hammer even the very best drummers that I've ever seen. They still get hammered by these yahoos that are in their mom's basement or whatever. But you just have to be kind of thicker skinned to be able to handle that kind of thing, because somebody's going to come across it and go, geez, that's the perfect sound for me. That's how I've gotten hired from bands, is they've seen my videos just on Facebook, and they were like, you would be perfect for this. But it's that matter of putting it out there and seeing where it lands sometimes too. You have to do that kind of work. It's not just hoping that it happens, but you have to, like for me, I do some networking, but I go to a lot of drummer functions, and I go to the NAMM shows and things like that, but I meet a lot of people in the industry, and that has helped me build this business and get drumming jobs and things like that. And I know a lot of people have that same kind of story. It's kind of, in any business, it's kind of who you know, right? So, and people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. I say that almost every day. So it's kind of like creating that reputation of being on time, being easy to work with, your instrument, your music, you come prepared. And once that reputation is built about you, people want to work with you,
Definitely. And I definitely want to like clarify that when I say happenstance, that can feel really overwhelming, of like, oh, so, it's just your fate, and then you just have to hope you have the luck. It's like a combination of like
Yes.
it's your attitude and what it is that you're focused on and what it is that you want, and for me, like, yeah, I just sort of like got to this place where it was like, drums are it, that was my initial lightning bolt. Like, I just want to do them in whatever way I can, purely for the joy of doing it. And like I said, I was literally never not employed from that moment on in some way. Again, it was a trajectory to get to full-time touring, but like I knew what I wanted. So that's that's the magic serendipity, is like, what's your goal? What are you wanting? And what are you working towards? Again, though, doing it for the baby steps, for the process, not for the end result. I think that's huge.
No, I want to add one thing. This is a great conversation, and JJ, much respect for you always. One thing that I wanted to add is I actually moved to a music city. I live in Nashville, and it's and I agree with everything you said, because I toured professionally full time in the '90s, and that was serendipity. I met somebody, they needed a drummer, boom, there I go. But I think that it also helps if you live you don't have to move to a music city like Nashville or LA or Austin or New York, but I think being in or Atlanta now, I think that's also another one. I don't think you have to necessarily be there, but it helps because you're around people that are like doing this stuff seriously. Like, I guess it depends on how serious you want to do this, because like in Richmond where I was living, nobody wanted to do it full time. I did, and you go to a place like Nashville or LA, people are doing it full time. And once you get in there and you start networking and you start getting gigs, if and then people get to know who you are, and it kind of rolls from one to another like that. So
Yeah.
that would be something else I would add. I mean, it depends on how serious you want to make it. You can totally make a major life change, and I think Liz discussed about that in her interview a few weeks ago with moving here and what that did for her. So it just depends on
Right.
what you're looking for in life. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
some
True.
people can make that change and some people can't. And it's not necessarily the only way to make it either. Like I said, or what is making it? I mean, that's such a
Right.
broad term. I've struggled with what that is my whole life. And I really respected you saying that too, JJ, because it's not necessarily just playing in stadiums. It's making people happy, at the end of the day. So,
Making a living, as a big one. And I think, yeah, I
yep,
think what you're saying is like putting yourself in the environment where that kind of stuff can happen. And again, purely because you love it. Like I'm sure Nashville was, I hope anyways, was amazing, and you're just like, oh my God, and there's all these bands and music and you're just feeling that energy and like you are meeting all these people and like, so again, you're sort of in this whole vibe and that builds on itself and reciprocates.
Yeah.
And so that
oh,
energy attracts things to you, it's all of that kind of stuff. But that can feel overwhelming.
absolutely.
Can
Well,
feel,
and you have to decide too, because some people, I think you said it, it's so right. It's about making it or being, whatever as a drummer. For some people, making it means you are a studio musician. You get to be on people's albums.
right,
Some people would never want to go on tour. That is not their thing. They have a family. They just don't want to be on the road with a bunch of people all the time. And some people it is, they want to tour. That's their thing. That's their ultimate goal. Other people, they want to have full-time students. That's all they want to do. And so really it is kind of knowing who you are and what I love the way you said it. What makes you come alive? Because once you decide that, and once you know yourself like that, things will start to fall into place. You're not working against yourself. Does that make sense?
really.
Because when you're chasing a dream that doesn't fit you, you're always struggling within yourself. It doesn't ever really work out. But once you're chasing a dream that is for you, then it will start to fall into place. It just like you said, JJ, I think you said it very well, but I agree with every word that you said because I've seen that in my own life and I've seen that with a lot of people that I've interviewed.
And I think being willing to take the baby steps, there can be this impatience of like, I should be there. And like, why aren't I? And then you sort of start to, and I've been there, like been there in that mindset of like this resentment, almost like this resentment against the universe of like, here's the thing. And I'm trying so hard and I love it so much. And why isn't it happening for me? And it's like wanting to go from step 1 to step 10 and realizing that like it will happen when it is time because you've taken those other steps. And that's the whole, the total cliche, but it's so true of like enjoying the journey or it's about the process. It is a process and you've got to love what you're doing and love all the steps and not just want the outcome and want the result. And
Yeah.
that takes time and work and all of that. But again, work, quote unquote, because if you're doing what you love, it's awesome. Like you're totally like enjoy because you're doing this thing that you love and you're so grateful. Again, cliche, the gratitude, for being wherever you're at, is massive. So Nikki,
Yeah.
you really started a whole a whole conversation there. It was cool. But I think that like, getting clarity and just kind of figuring out what you want and yeah, there's no magic bullet and blah blah again, more cliches. But like it's a whole thing and there are so many circuitous ways to get there. But yeah, figuring out what you want.
Well,
So
and I've noticed too, there's a couple of kinds of people that I encounter all the time, and it's people that are constantly finding roadblocks to whatever, that just everything they just kind of always seem to be tripping over anywhere that they want to go. There's just
yeah,
always a problem. And
yeah.
then there are other people that, yeah, there are problems along the way, but they're the type of people that can always figure it out. They can figure out a way to get to where they want to go. And I think that almost we all have to have that kind of mindset that no matter what comes up, our age, our illnesses, our family dynamics, or whatever, those are just obstacles that we can overcome. I tell people all the time, it's really hard, but it's not impossible. So if something is impossible, yeah, okay, can't do it. But I don't know of hardly anything that's impossible. We can do just about anything as driven women, human beings, if we've set our minds to it. So you have to have that mindset of it's hard, but it's not impossible. Once you have that, literally anything is open to you. And I've had to have that with, having lupus, and I'm 56. It's not like I'm young, just starting my career, but my career is just taking off, and I'm, nearly 60, but I'm not letting that stop me. That's just one of those little things. It's just a road bump. It doesn't have to be something that's going to stop me because I'm not young anymore, or I'm not healthy enough, or I'm not whatever. That doesn't matter when a band hears you play. They don't care. They don't care if you are really good. They just want you to be there. And if you're easy to work with, that's such an important thing too.
And just what
no
you're
one
saying,
wants a diva in their band.
absolutely. And just, I think it's so important to stress that whole, like, what is success to you?
Mhm.
And I would think for any of us, it's being, having joy with what we're doing. Like, that's the ultimate,
Absolutely.
it's not even the thing, that's sort of the spiritual whatever, but it's like, anything we're ever doing, we're not going for the thing itself, we're going for how it makes us feel. And so how are you feeling as you're doing it? That's the success part. And I think it's worth mentioning too, because Nikki just wrote something, pretty powerful in the chat. And I just think, and like, I think that, this idea of sort of like not, I think musician, because I could have done the neuroscience and thing, and I would have had this exact track to follow. You get this degree, and then you get your master's, and then you get your PhD, and then you're a postdoc, and then you decide what your area of research is, and blah blah blah. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's neuroscience. Sometimes it's literally brain surgery, but still, it's kind of laid out for you. And as musicians, like, we have to make the path. Like, that is like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, there is no track that's laid out for us. We're making it up. And you can try and go, well, that person did this, and you can like try and follow it. And again, I've done that, try and follow it as a formula. So if I just do X, Y, and Z, I will be guaranteed to get the result that they got. Not at all.
No.
So
not in music.
almost taking stock of, like, this is a hard road that we've chosen as artists and musicians. It's not just a path that's laid out. We have to create it. And then, but the outside of that, again, is what is success to you then? It's what your joy that you're finding in it. Why are you doing it? Because it makes you feel good.
And don't you find that if you're joyful in your own life, that anyone around you, I mean, it is that kind of ripple effect. You bring joy to other people because you're joyful. If I always see people as kind of weather systems. So you have the power to go in and be a tornado on somebody, right? You have the power to completely rain on their parade. You can destroy them in a few words, or you can go in and be sunshine to somebody that's having a really hard time. We all have that kind of power about us. So when we're living our life in a joyful way, it spreads out to anyone that we come in contact with. And that's so true in our music. I think even more than other things, because it really does light us up. It's one of those things that feeds your soul so much.
So true. So true. That's that reciprocal, you're creating and then you're attracting that back to yourself, and, it compounds on itself.
Yeah.
So
okay. Cool. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I don't want to dominate. So do other people, I know you guys are appreciating this conversation because I keep seeing the chats. So does anybody else have a question for JJ or for anyone else in the group?
Hi, JJ, it's Linda.
Hey, Linda.
I actually put one in the chat just a second ago about overcoming fear of playing in front of people.
Yeah.
Oh, is that your question? How do you overcome the fear of playing in front of people?
So I've been playing for 5 years now. I have my little she shed up there, and I just put on the headphones and I play the music, and it's my outlet, and I love it. But for years, I've been nervous about playing in front of people. I just get very anxious. So I was wondering what could help with that.
Well, and I think you said something about rock camps. I mean, rock camps can be huge in that way, because it sort of like pushes you out of your comfort zone, but you're also collaborating with other people. So I think that can be, they're just amazing in every way, shape, and form, and on every level. I cannot suggest highly enough to do a ladies rock camp. It will, it's just a total life changer. But there's not a lot happening right now because of COVID. And even if you find a girls rock camp, not every GRC does a ladies camp. So that can be, but again, check it out and see where you're at and if there's one that you can join. But I think in general, and other people can weigh in too, there's sort of like, I got it off my drums because I wanted to show this to you, like the whole perfectionism thing. Like I have this on my drums and it says expressing, not proving. Like if there's a way that I was doing all this soul searching of like, just what, because I have all the like putting out videos of myself because I see my heroes and I'm not there and blah, but and it's the usual thing, and I have all this perfectionism around it. And it was like, it took me this whole trajectory of being like, well, wait a second, like I'm an artist. What do artists do? We express ourselves. And typically, the best artists, you're expressing your pure authentic self, basically is what I would call it. And to me, that is elemental. So like there is no judgment that anyone can have on your pure authentic self. It would be like saying like the element hydrogen is dumb, or Jupiter is, a bad planet or something like that. Like to me, like if you're expressing your pure self there, it's immutable. And so that then you can kind of be like, there's no judgment that there can be of that. And so if I'm expressing that as opposed to proving that I'm a good drummer, proving that I'm at this level, blah, blah. And again, this is something I'm dealing with on an hourly basis. I have not conquered this, like this is a huge deal. And that's why I want to do this whole perfectionism thing, because it's debilitating for all of us in different ways and at different levels. So that's what I would say, that is like, look at it as, if you're just to play, again, what's your goal? Do you want to jam with other people? Well, it's fairly low stakes. If let's say you have a bass player and a guitarist and you're just in a room and that's how you're playing in front of those two people, and then you can see how that feels. And if that feels good, maybe then you guys play for your families. And if that feels good, then maybe you play a venue, like you can do it in that way and kind of titrate it, and see what feels comfortable. Maybe you start with one person. But it is a huge deal. But I think it's like, again, why are you doing it? Is it that you feel like you have to prove something? Or is it that you're expressing yourself? And again, we all are on a trajectory of our playing, and we're just at different places on that. So there's no judgment of that. All of us were where you are. Yeah. And we had to just keep going to get to this part of it. So is that helpful? Like,
could I add something?
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much. That I'm going to write that down because that will really, really help.
Nicole had something to add too.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
The one thing I was just throwing in there in the mix of like how to come into playing in front of other people with a lot more confidence is two things that I've really tried to implement as well, is this idea of really strong visualizations. So when I practice, especially once I've got the groove down, whatever I'm doing, I then do a practice session where I'm just focused on visualizing what it would be like if people were in the room. So I'm playing with a very strong visualization of the room being packed. So I start to get tense. So I have to teach myself to relax when it's low stakes and no one's there. And then the second visualization I do is before I play in front of anybody. You'll find me 5 minutes before I play, shaking my arms out, and I'm visualizing me enjoying the heck out of the next hour to 2 hours I'm about to play. So I walk onto the stage with this, like, I'm ready to go because I just saw myself having so much fun. Let's go chase after that. So visualizations really helped me a lot.
That's beautiful. I love that. I have another thing to add that I taught a women's camp this last November, and we were all supposed to go around and talk about some things that have been kind of I don't know how to express it, but the thing that kind of is our go-to, I don't know, kind of like a lightning bolt, something that has happened to us that has changed the trajectory of our lives. And for me, it was a couple of years ago. You know how on January 1st, everybody comes up with these New Year's resolutions. I've never done those. But for whatever reason, a couple of years ago, I decided that I was going to say yes to any opportunity that came my way that I would normally say no to. I mean, not anything that's illegal or gross, but
With
yeah, with limitations, but anything that I would normally say, oh no, there's no way I would do that. That's just out of my wheelhouse. I made myself for the last 2 years, and I'm still doing it. I'm making myself, I catch myself going in my head, nope, no way I'm going to do that. I make myself say out loud to these people, yep, I'll figure it out. And so for the last 2 years, I've been doing that. And what has happened in my life in the last 2 years has been an explosion of opportunities, because I'm saying yes to things that I would normally have shut down because they scare me, because I don't think I'm worthy of being able to do that. I'm not educated enough, whatever. But I will never grow if I don't get out of what I'm comfortable in. So I have to say yes to those things that scare me. I mean, I've seen those sayings, if your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough or whatever. And it's kind of that way. If what you're kind of chasing isn't outside of what you're comfortable in, you're never going to be outside of where you are, right? You have to get off the merry-go-round if you want to see something different in your life. So I make myself say yes to things that are really beyond what I can do right now, because that makes me go from here to there.
Wow.
I have to get to a new place in my life. And so if that helps anybody, you might want to take that on as something that pushes you forward in a direction, because just saying yes to things that we can already do isn't really going to help us go further in our, musical whatever that we want.
Well, the thing I love the most about that is you're seeing such an immediate, feedback from that. Like you're doing that and your life is exploding, all these things, like you're seeing this immediate, result from doing that, which again, we're not going for results, but you're seeing how it reciprocates on itself. The more I say yes, the more I push myself, I put myself out there, I express myself, the more it comes back to me and builds.
It's immense. Like the day that I told my husband I'm making half the money, because we were both working together at a hospice. I'm a hospice social worker, that's how I'm trained. And I said, I can't do it anymore. I have to do music full time. And he said, you make half of the money. Where's it going to come from? And I literally turned in my resignation. And the next week I got a call from Facebook to shoot a commercial for them. And money has been coming in since, I don't know how. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it just, like you said, jobs just keep coming in. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it just seems to work out somehow.
And because you made the commitment to that, you made it and said,
I did.
want this. I want to do music. And so I think that, and there's, again, the cliches of the universe sort of goes, okay, like I hear you, and it starts like being this path or whatever. I think that's massive. And I think it's worth also saying that like there will likely also be some sacrifices. And again, there's no right or wrong in that. Like I absolutely need to say a lot of the reason I've been able to do touring full time is because I've like been in situations where I didn't pay rent, or I paid very minimal rent, or things like that. Like I was, fortunate enough to figure things out like that, but I don't have savings. I don't have retirement. I don't have a home, and again, it doesn't mean that you can when you follow your dreams, you are not going to have money, but that's also what I was modeled when I was little. And that's my, trajectory is changing my money mindset, that just because I'm an artist doesn't mean I have to be in poverty. But like, that's an artist myth, but like, that's something it's worth saying too, that it's not just like, we're, just totally like, it just struck me what you said about making half the money, and that it all depends on what you're wanting. If it's more important to you to make money, then there's different choices that you're going to make.
Yeah. So. And I've got to say too, a lot of the people that everybody puts on these pedestals that are they're playing with the biggest stars on the planet, right? They are their drummers. They're touring with them. They are recording with them, yada, yada, yada. They have side gigs, you guys. They don't only do that full time. A lot of them are still like construction workers, or they're still doing whatever. But they have decided, I have to do this. This
Yeah.
is my life. I'm
Yeah.
going to do what it takes to have pay my rent and to pay for my car or whatever, so that I can do this because this is what makes me happy.
Totally.
So there's no shame in that. Just because you're a touring drummer doesn't mean that you won't also be sacking groceries or driving DoorDash. Because a lot of people do. A lot of people are Uber drivers that are also touring with major bands, but right now they can't do that. So they have to have money coming in. There's no shame in that as well. You just have to really decide, like you said, JJ, where do you want to go? And what are you willing to do to get there, you know?
Exactly. And that
But
reminds
stretching yourself is going to be a really determining factor. Making yourself get out of your comfort zone, I think, so much.
Well, and I think that what you're saying too about the money thing reminds me of that post that had such a massive response a couple months ago about, like, people starting their career and feeling like they're too old, and that's so
That's
they
funny
was
to
a
me.
waitress, and Harrison Ford was a carpenter, but it's exactly what you're saying. Like, they were
Right.
doing both of these things in order that they finally got to this place where they could leave the one and go, just towards their art or whatever. But I just thought that was so massive. Like, it obviously struck such a huge chord with everybody, of this idea that it's too late.
Yeah.
Like, even in some of the comments of my post this week, like, well, I love that you went to Berkeley, but I think for me, it's just too late to start over again. And I'm just like, you're deciding that. Like, and again, no judgment. I'm not saying it's just like, oh, just so easy to just blah, blah, blah. It's not easy, but it's never too late. And I think that is massive. And I think you and I, Tammy, are perfect examples of that. Like,
Right.
it's just really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at either of our lives, it's not easy doing a lot of the things that we do. And I know that if I sat down and interviewed every one of you, you would have these amazing stories of overcoming the obstacles to get where you are. I mean, we all kind of have to have that. And if you really want to do something, this is stupid, but if you really want to do something to make your mark on the world, you have to get out of your own way to do it. That's so, because that self-doubt and that self-judgment shuts all of that down.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Who else has a comment or a question?
Yeah, anybody else?
Shiloh?
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
I love JJ. Tammy, thank you so much for the platform that we can all share this time. It's been amazing. One of my lightning bolt moments is just finding your group. So thank you. Yay. And I did want to ask or add or comment, or I'm not quite sure where it's going, but in this conversation of saying yes to opportunities, I just also want to remind myself and whoever else is out there that some of us are yes people to the point that we don't realize we're not leaving space for the yes that we think
that's
is
good.
True.
Just to leave space for the yes that's inside ourselves, because we're so, like, we want to please people, we want people to feel joy, we want to do everything for them, where so many of us are just naturally want to lift others up, and we don't even realize that we're sinking ourselves in doing that. And so I love JJ's reminder that this is about expressing, this is about finding what lights you up, and just to remind folks that yes means yes to this,
Yes.
It's
Yeah, that's so good, because a lot of people really don't have good boundaries with other people and within themselves. And so, yeah, you have to have good boundaries with you and other people in your relationships. That's so correct, because as women, we tend to want to take care of everyone. We want to feed everyone. We want to say yes to everyone. We don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable around us, right? So we have to have really good boundaries to take self-care. But we also need to say yes to opportunities that would get us to the next stage if that's what we want.
Yes, amazing. So having discernment about your yeses.
So good. Yes.
Basically.
Perfect word for that.
Mhm.
Shiloh, thank you. That was really good. That was something that we didn't mention before, and that was really important. So thank you so much for that. Oh, Linda said, thanks for that. Yes to boundaries. I have to run, but thank you so much for this. Thank you, Linda. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Oh, I can't read your name.
That's okay.
But go ahead.
Hi, thanks for a lovely talk, and it's great to hear you talk about your trajectory, JJ. Just had a couple of questions. I don't know if there's time, and if not, that's okay. But
I've got time.
Go ahead.
my thoughts were about what's your relationship to technique, and it'd be lovely to hear what your technique, your journey through technique is, and how you connect with technique at the moment, and what's inspiring you technique wise. So that was one thought that came to mind, and another one was that you were describing that you were previously involved in neuroscience, which
Mm-hmm.
is fascinating, and I wondered if you had insights, if that was bringing you insights in your career as a drummer, in your work as a drummer, and what those might be.
Totally. Oh, let me answer that one first, which I think just so huge, kind of especially in teaching, and but with myself as well, because so much of teaching is I look at myself as more of a coach than a teacher in a lot of ways, and so much of coaching is again this reciprocal relationship. It's changing me as well to do that teaching. And it's not just me handing down knowledge from on high, but I'm also evolving and have a trajectory through the sharing of it. And so just the knowing of that like when you're learning something new, let's say independence, as a technique, that like there is a certain amount of time for all of us that it takes for that physiology to happen. Like Benny Greb talks about this, where he's like, I can hear in my mind what I want to do, but I have to wait for my body to catch up. Like there's just, it's because it's not just building your muscles. It's not just building muscle memory. You're literally, and all my students that are in here know, they've heard me say this so many times, you're building these new nerve pathways. And that you're literally, it's called mapping to your brain from your hands and your leg, and those are new things and new physiological processes that take time and is a process. So that would be to me the most obvious thing with myself as well, when I get impatient or like, why isn't this happening, or I can't seem to do this, or maybe some of it is just me particular and my body. Like I just found out this year I have a hip impingement, and it's something I was born with. So like maybe I feel like I come up against a certain like whatever with my kick drum speed. Wow, maybe it was, so again, I can get all down on myself. I just need to do or practice harder. What's wrong? And it's like, oh, maybe because this is how my body was made. I don't know. So that would be my first, and just how does learning happen? Being able to meet people where they are and explain things in a way that for that particular person. And I think all of that comes from neuroscience stuff. So that can kind of segue into the technique thing. I felt like for years I would always say that like my playing style was like I had like just boundless energy but no technique and that it wasn't completely those two things, but that was definitely my style, was just this huge and people would always say that's the compliment I would get over and over and over, is I love to watch you play. So there's again this reciprocal and this sort of like living vicariously thing that happens. But I had never even worked with a metronome. I didn't know literally, you guys, when I went to Berkeley, I did not know what a backbeat was. That's where the snare goes. But the language for in the floor, I didn't, none of that. Ghost notes, it turns out I do a lot of ghost notes. No idea what, I just did something and it came out. So the technique part has been huge, with the Berkeley thing, but leading into, I've done a bunch of stuff like with Mike Johnston, I think is amazing. And, different, just really focusing on my hands. And that's so much of what I'm doing with a lot of my students right now is finger technique and incorporating that. And just sort of efficiency around the drums, with being able to use your fingers and, that kind of it's just amazing, So I think for a long time I had with doing lessons, or studying, well, that's going to change my style, and that was just a way of being I felt insecure that I was going to not be able to do stuff. And that's exactly what happened. I went to Berkeley and it was I was starting over. It was I had never played, is what it felt like in a lot of ways. So incorporating the technique, and this dovetails with the neuroscience, that it's a process and it takes time, but it's so worth it, because just being able to play in this much more smooth, efficient way, and just my timing, my sense of timing and feel in the music and all of that kind of stuff. I had, what would be just sort of a essence of really good instincts but then being able to refine that into these ways using technique. You know, I've worked a lot on my foot pedal speed, and a lot on my finger technique, and just getting to really diving into independence now and like linear stuff, you know, and odd groupings, things like that. That's kind of next level, and that's a lot of what Annika does, you know, or Annika,
Yeah.
like, you know, so that's what I would say. I hope that kind of answers your question. I mean, there's so much that can be said about technique, but it's not, you know, I think I'll differ from like Dorothea, I think, in this group, because she really comes from the old school, like, this is what you do, and it's drum corps, and you have to start with the pad and blah, you know, and I'm always kind of like, you know, I feel like you need to do what feels good to you. And if like doing a bunch of pad stuff for hours isn't fun, like, I don't want you to not play. That's probably the biggest thing. I don't want you to not play because you're not interested in technique. I want you to play because you love it and play no matter what. But technique is this amazing way to be even better and have even better quote unquote timing, flow, to express yourself in a better way, basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Benny Greb talks about. He talks about, well, I want to be able to do anything that comes to me. And, you know, and so that takes this huge amount of practice and whatever and study in order to be able to carry out with your body anything that you can think of in your mind. So that might be another way to say, well, what's the point of good technique? So you can do these things that you want to do. You can express yourself in this amazing way.
That's fantastic. I have one question for you before we cut out. I see you as kind of the gear queen of the group. I know there are probably a lot of people that are very gear oriented and they know their business, but if there's ever a gear question, I always tag you on it because I know that you know the answer. So how did you become the gear guru, really?
That's an awesome question. I think some of it is just being super like technical minded. I think when I was little, like I wanted to be one of those kids that would like take apart a radio and put it back together, and I never was able to do that, but I wanted to be that. And so I think that was part of my like, and also after I got my neuroscience degree, and then I was like, you know, and doing research, and that's not really what I want to do. And so what can I do as a day job? I got into computers, and that was literally the early days of like, that was right when Windows came out and Windows 95 and all of that. I was there doing all of that. So the problem solving aspect, I think I just naturally from doing that as a day job, like came out of that, and just having the interest and then starting to do projects where I was helping engineer and like learning how to, you know, how does that work? And, you know, going from reel to reel to ADAT to, you know, Cakewalk to Pro Tools and now Logic. Like, you know, I'm technically inclined that way. I just have an interest in it. But I think that I just started doing stuff where I could be involved, and some of that was a DIY. It was like, okay, we want to do this and we don't know how, and that was probably, it's sort of like born of necessity. So much of that for me was like, I don't know who to ask. It might even be more in the early days of the internet. I don't know where to get the information, so I'm going to have to figure it out because I want to do this. You know, I want to make this demo, or I want to record this track, or I want to have this sound, so I have to figure it out in order to do that. So I think those all sort of like come in on there. And then, you know, in the last few years, like Girlyman's last 3, you know, we did a kids record and our last record and did a live record, and I helped, you know, I co-produced and co-engineered all of those. So I have my friend Nate, you know, in the band, like I just work so well with him, and like, you know, so it was, you know, he's like, you know, massive gearhead. So even just learning through him has been huge. But I think a huge part of it is, it's just I want to do something, so I figure it out and do it, for better or worse. And
I love
that's
that.
how I've able, you know, just kind of like naturally figured it out.
I want you to have an opportunity to plug your class as well.
I'm so that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I did a live a couple weeks ago on recording, you know, just generally, and what are all the different options for recording at home and starting to do your own tracks and maybe starting to do drum videos. So that there was so much interest in that I was thinking about doing like a recording class series. And so then we did a poll in the group, kind of seeing where people are at, and it kind of laid out or fell out in the numbers just like as I thought they would. So the first one would be sort of like, audio concepts, and that's what's this coming weekend on Saturday. It's just like, what is signal to noise ratio? What is analog to digital conversion? You know, and I'm definitely am not the person to go way down some technical rabbit hole, but those basic concepts, and you can use actually the analogy of water through a hose or a pipe works really great for audio and signal sound and processing. So that first class would be just like audio concepts leading to what is just the base gear that you would need to record a track at home. So that would be an audio interface, a DAW, a mic, a cable. And that class will go through what are different kinds of mics, different DAWs, different audio interfaces, and I'll even have like a list of different options. So then that would lead to the next class where it would be, once you have your DAW, your interface, and your mic, let's record a track. And we'll do that together, and just through GarageBand, because that's a free DAW that everybody with a Mac has. And literally step by step, we plug this in, you do this, you set this level, you put this as your input, you hit record, blah 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 blah. Like, we do it together, because that's so much of my thing, is like the demystifying of it. You know, the empowering of like everybody, especially now, everyone can do this. It can feel, I think as women, we're often socialized to not be technical. And I want you to know you can do this. It is so accessible to you, price-wise, technology-wise, knowledge-wise. Like, I'm all about that. So that's so this first class, so basically today, like I was, and that was what the poll too, is trying to figure out sort of a price point. So I had set it at $50, but I was going to say for $40 for Drummergirl members. And then we were going to do a drawing in this today, which I don't know if we'll have time, but maybe anybody that's interested could raise their hand, and I will write your names down, and then I'll do like the, names in a hat thing or something.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that would be to give away like a registration, basically. Like, if somebody.
Fantastic. I love that. Carmi, she's from the Philippines, and she wrote a question. I'm paraphrasing, but she's basically wanting to know what your practice routine is.
Oh, that's awesome. It is, well, again, so it depends on what I'm focusing on, but like I'll take foot speed. So basically, and that was a few years ago that I was really, really into it. And so I use this thing called Groove Scribe, which I want to do a whole live on in the group, but it's Mike Johnston developed it, but it's an interactive free transcription tool. And the powerful thing about it is you can share a transcription just by using a web address. But what I love about it is that you can play it back, and it's free. So basically what I did is I took some stuff from Drumeo, I took some stuff from Mike Johnston, from like some different players, and basically made this kind of conglomeration of like these different kick drum like drills, basically like speed drills. And there was singles, doubles, triples, quads, different patterns. And I basically made a transcription for each one of those. And then I got all those links, and I put those links in a file. And then basically I would sit down, open up my laptop, and I would just sequentially click open. Either I had them open already as windows, or I would just click through this file. And I would do like, 2 or 3 minutes on each one. And I would do that every day, and depending on how much total time I had. Because this is something, and Shiloh and I talk about this a lot in our sessions, which is like this, when you go to practice and making a practice routine, how can you make it as much of a no-brainer as absolutely possible? Because I just know for myself, if there's any like, I need to plug this in, and then I have to like search for that, and then I spend half my practice time trying to figure out what I'm going to practice, like, and then I don't do it. Like, and so what are these, we call it micro resistances. How can we get rid of these micro resistances in order to make that you just sit down, open it up, boom, and you start playing. And so that's what I know for me, just overall, whatever the content of your practice is, that depends on what it is that you're wanting to work on. And that's a whole other thing. How do you decide? How do you prioritize? How do you do triage? So much of that is just a feel thing. Like I said, right, and I did a bunch of foot stuff. That set me up now with my speed to do more linear stuff. And that's leading to independence, and a finger technique led me to this. But I had to choose. I had to go, what do I feel like is my weakest area? And I felt like it was my foot and my timing. And so I really focused on those. So that's what I would say overall, like the content aside, making it as much of a no-brainer and as easy as possible to just sit down and start playing is the absolute key to a practice routine.
That's great. Maya, did you have a question?
I wanted to know the name of that program that you just mentioned.
GrooveScribe. So it's not a program, it's a tool. So it's actually a website that you go to. So it's mikeslessons.com/gscribe. And again, I want to do a live in the group. And if you even search on GrooveScribe in the group, you'll see I've mentioned it so many times and there's so many links in there. But yeah, so it's basically all online. So it's not an app, it's not software, you don't download it, you go do it on the website. But every time you make a transcription, you hit share and it makes a unique URL. And that URL will always open that transcription. And you can slow it down, you can change the subdivisions, you can change the timing. I mean, it's incredible. It's completely changed my life certainly as a teacher, but as a drummer as well.
That's fantastic. Allie, did you have a question? Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead, Allie.
No, when you said you were going to have a draw and raise hand, I hit the raise hand. And then a few others have hit the raise hand as well. But either way, I'm going to join it because I think that would be a great class to do. So thanks, JJ. It's been really great hearing your things.
Sure. Yeah, anybody else want to do maybe just like actually physically raise your hand? Or I guess some people don't have their video, but that would want to be for the drawing or whatever that I'll do.
Okay, so, I see Maya, I see Shiloh. I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Sinja?
Okay.
Is that right? I also see Marquise. Is that right? Is that your name? Am I saying that correctly?
Oh, hi everyone. Actually, my name's Karen. I didn't want to join Faith's group, and I have a kind of group of 5 people, and somebody set up the account for me, and that was the name.
Got it. Okay, got it.
So,
okay, Karen, thank you.
Actually, I would like to add something if I could.
Please.
So going back to the whole fear thing. I mean, I've had many different careers, and I think in my younger days, I wanted to do something. It was film production in Northern California. I didn't know anybody, I didn't know anything, but just something that I wanted, and it happened for me. You know, all it takes is one little tiny step. And looking back on all the different things I've done, I think when I was younger, I didn't know that I could fail at something. I just knew it's something that I wanted. And so, and as I get older and I look back and I thought, you know what, if I have any inkling of I can't do this, then I just won't do it. It just won't happen. But I think now if you say to yourself, if I want to do something and I know that I cannot fail, what would I do? Go with that.
Totally.
You know, and I think that's helped me a lot.
That's amazing.
Right. So same thing. We like Tammy said, we as women, we've gone through so much. We have a lot of tenacity. We don't pick up drums thinking I can do this. You know, we pick it up because we love it, and I'm going to make this happen no matter what. And to go to the next step, I think it's not until much older that I realized the fear is the fear itself. Right. So if you can think of something that I want to do and I can fail, what would you do?
Totally. So good.
Right. And also, let's say if I want to go to, the Berkeley school, it's nothing I've ever considered. But if something I want to do, I could not do it 2 years from now, I wouldn't have the degree or the knowledge. But if you want to do it, go for it. 2 years later, you would have it. It's yours. So I think, it's the mindset of, and also taking the leap of faith. You want to do something, but there's no money, there's no time, there's plenty of no's. But if you just take the leap, if you're halfway in the air, you're gonna land somewhere. And I think it only takes that one little thing. And I think people talked about, like Tammy says, I only make half of the money. What do I do? But if you take the leap, something will catch you. Something would you would grab something in the air and just go from there. And I think that's the tough part of, thinking that all the no's, right? All the no's, but grab onto something that you want, and then just go from there.
I love that. And I love that whole like jump and the net will appear. Sonia, you just turned off your thing. Do you want to ask something?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'm guilty of this myself, is the whole concept of analysis paralysis,
Right. Right.
where you kind of overanalyze it. You know, what am I going to do for money if I jump ship off of this ship and try to do music or whatever? Because growing up, logic mind was telling me, you know, music is like a pyramid. Only these few people make enough money to pay the bills or whatever, and everybody else is a starving artist, like what you mentioned. So yeah, this has been a great talk. You know, there's great topics and everything, because I've been struggling for years, feeling like I'm on a rudderless ship. What do I do? You know, and for the concept of do something because you want to do it, instead of for what somebody else might want, or what does the world want, that kind of thing. That's new concept, thought-provoking. I like it. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's I think that gets a little bit into some of the stuff that Nikki was saying too earlier, that it was just like, you know, oh my God, now I have to figure it out. Like, so that's like super empowering, and it's also terrifying. You know, so
Yeah.
it's like, you know, we want to kind of know that like if I do A, B, C, I will get X, Y, Z. Like we want to have something laid out, you know, so that this idea that, okay, I'm just gonna like make my way and, you know, and figure it out as it goes, it's not a guarantee, is really scary. And it's totally up to whatever I want to do. That's not something, I think too, that maybe sometimes as we're socialized as women, there's all so many factors in that with, you know, our culture or whatever. So it's like, but I think that, you know, it reminds me of like when I first graduated college and I sat out like on our campus right before I left for the last time. And it was this feeling of like, I could either be like, oh my God, you know, anything's possible. Or it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, like both of those coexist. So how can you like turn it around to, you know, because they're both the same thing of like, anything is possible, you know, kind of a thing. So it's that, you know, we're kind of like, so that's sort of like a constant daily, I don't want to say battle, but, you know, something to struggle with, you know, or whatever. How can you?
I think it is a battle, though. I think it is a battle, because it's so much that you've heard the term, the battlefield is in the mind. So much of it is how you talk to yourself about whatever situation you're in. I think we talk ourselves out of so many good things.
Totally.
So many good opportunities and so many things that we really could be doing, but we talk ourselves out of it because we don't think we can, whatever, XYZ.
Like self-limitation. Allie?
I think so.
Yeah.
If we've got two minutes, I'd love to share with you something that happened to me that could have gone either way. I could have never picked a drumstick up again in my life. I had this amazing drum teacher, and he's a professor at the university in Cuba, there in Havana, lives here in Bermuda. And he's like the drum teacher on the Drum movie, you know, what's it called?
Oh, Drumline or Whiplash?
No, Whiplash. He's like that guy.
Wow.
But awesome teacher. And I wanted to do more Latin rhythms. And I went in there one night and he was playing Motown, because he's been playing drums here in Bermuda all his life as well, doing the gig scene. And I said, oh, I love Motown. Let's play some Motown together. We started playing. We were having a really good jam. And I said, you know, I'd really like to learn blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, no, you haven't got the hands for that. You're not ready for that yet. No, and please don't ever play Motown again.
Whoa.
And he turned on me. It turned on a dime. It was the weirdest thing. I've since found out that, you know, he typically does this when a student gets to a certain level and he feels like that, you know, they're progressing and going to leave him. But I did leave him. I never went back again. But 3 weeks later, I played to an audience of 3,000 people with 3 standing ovations with our band. And
fantastic. Did you play Motown?
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, the ultimate triumph.
Like, just send him a video of that.
I would love to see that too. That's fantastic.
But you know what? I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed. I didn't play for 2 weeks had this gig looming, and I thought, there's no way I can do it. And I just, as you said, record yourself. I did that on my own in tears. And just, I said, you know what? Nobody's telling me I can't do something. If you tell me I can't, I will.
Yeah, amen. I love that.
That was, so I hope that helps. If any of you are going through that, I've seen some comments from, my teacher says I'm not getting this, or I'm not doing this, or not doing that. Then, use another strategy. Do something else. Don't give up.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of people, Kathy Gertz said to JJ to please add her to the list.
Got it. Yep.
Okay. And Kate Sumner, I see your hand is up. Did you have a question for JJ?
No, I didn't have a question. I was also just raising my hand for the class.
Got it.
Okay.
You're on my
Fantastic.
list.
I did see a comment from Shiloh. She wanted JJ to speak about resistance.
Yeah, I'll just quickly mention that's something that just this idea, and that gets into sort of the practice routine and these micro resistances. But like this, something that Shiloh and I have done some work with. There's this book called Do the Work, and the guy has written another book called The War of Art. But it's basically kind of talking about why is it as artists that we sort of like, the most simple thing would be like, why do you decide to like do the dishes and clean your house and do everything else before you sit down to practice?
Guilty.
Or before you sit down as you're a writer, before you do your writing or whatever, and everything starts to take precedence, and pretty soon it's 11 o'clock at night, you're super tired, you either don't do it or you're all burned out. Why is, so he talks about in this book this idea of like resistance with a capital R, that it's almost like a force in the universe that as artists we have to like conquer, like it almost is like a battle, and you have to expect it, just like a Newtonian, that this effect will cause this effect and it will bounce back. That once you, and that could be starting a business, that could be doing something that you've never done before, whatever, resistance with a capital R will come up in you. And what are you going to do to kind of like overcome that and push through it and do this thing that you want to do? So that has everything to do with what we're talking about today.
I love that. I love that. So much wisdom, JJ. Maya mentioned that Carmi had a question. Carmi, did you have a question that we didn't get to?
She said, I clean my place before I practice. There's positive energy in a clean place. I agree with that, but like there's a line there that you start finding all these other things to do instead of sitting down to do your art. And I think that it's finding that line,
We had a question earlier, and she says, what's your practice routine? What are your pre-gig rituals?
Oh, for me? Wow, pre-gig ritual. I would say being prepared is probably the hugest thing, just for me, because that's the perfectionism part. Like, I do not want to get caught like unawares or something that I don't know, so as much as possible. That said, also having plenty of room, like I talked about that song school and playing now with hundreds and hundreds of people. Sometimes I am literally have never heard the song, and I get on stage and I back them up. Like putting myself in that position where like I just have to go with whatever's going to happen. Like there's a magic that happens in that. So preparation for sure, and also doing things where you're just like going with the magic of the happenstance of what's happening, and then that's improv and jamming and all that. So I would say for a show, just like being on tour or whatever, it's like, again, sleeping well, eating well, going outside, probably like breathing some, doing maybe a little like 5-minute meditation or whatever, like doing some warm up with my hands so that I don't get out there and just completely cold, with the band that you're with, having a little huddle or whatever, just kind of like, all right, we're on this and this is what we're going to do. You could even like set intentions for the show. That's another really powerful thing. So those are all things that I use. But of course, sometimes you have those shows where you're literally like, you're just get up on stage because you don't know what, and it's some crazy thing or whatever. So it's like as much as you can have a ritual as possible is awesome. Find out what works for you. So does that answer some? Hopefully.
Well, I love that. You guys, we've gone like an hour and a half. Normally we keep this to an hour, but JJ, you've been so fascinating. I didn't want to shut it down because it's just been so important. And I think everyone here can back me up when we say it's been so good to listen to your story and get your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Thanks for, again, this just the opportunity and the group and the kind of person that you are. And I just love it all. So, but I appreciate hearing all of that and that you guys wanted to hear. You know, it was such a cool, like, I guess I just wanted to say that to go this process this week of making these posts. Like, again, this reciprocal thing where I was like, I have a story. You know, like I have this story of what's happened to me in my life and my career, and it all comes into drums and music, and it was just an amazing opportunity to like take stock of that and to like see it as a trajectory and as a story. So I just thanks to everyone and today, you know, for that. It's been amazing.
You bet. Very last thing. How can anyone hire you for lessons or follow you on social media? How would that be?
Totally. Well, there Empowered Drumming is, if there's a Facebook group for that, and then I have also JJ Plays Drums is on Instagram as far as social media. But I would say my website is the best thing. So it's empowereddrumming.com, and you can also write me on Facebook. But I'd totally give lessons and classes, and yeah, I do most stuff through Skype, but can do Zoom or whatever. But I think at this point I have like over 10 students are in the group. It's really awesome.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah, so
I love that.
It's empowereddrumming.com, and then just send me a message through Facebook or drop me an email, or there's a mailing list. You could also join my mailing list, would be amazing. So
I've never taken lessons from you, JJ, but so many people that have had so many wonderful things to say about you and about your teaching style and about your encouragement style. So you guys, if you need lessons, she would be such a good person to hit up.
Thank you, Tammy. Love that.
Awesome.
I love these chats. So will the chat be saved in the recording? Because
Absolutely. I record every chat, and I have been really, really bad about I go back and edit, like I edited out when I first come on, it's recording so you can see my face just looking at the screen until everybody else gets on. So I try to edit that out. I edit out everybody's goodbyes at the very end after it's all over, you know. And so I've been trying to edit. I edited about 20 this weekend and got them all up on our YouTube channel, and I tried to share them with the group. And once they're on the YouTube channel, you guys share away. I want everyone to see these. I think it's so important for people to know the different ladies that are in our group. And Nicole, you were one of the people that I interviewed, and that was such a good interview too. Nicole plays for the band I Am They, and she's an amazing drummer herself. So, and that was so fun. And JJ, thank you so much. I know that people are going to want to see this, and please feel free to share it. I will share it with the group from the YouTube link. I will share it with the group. So then you guys could always go onto the YouTube channel. It's just Drummergirls United on YouTube, and then share any of and all of those on your social media platforms, and hopefully they just take off and lots of people find out about you guys, and our group continues to grow and our community continues to support each other. So
absolutely. Well, we love you, Tammy. Thank you for doing this. You're amazing.